welcome to Justice. I'm Jeanine Pirro. Thanks for being with us tonight. And thank you for once again making Justice #1 last weekend. We have a packed show for you tonight. Counselor to the President Kellyanne Conway, Congressman Darrell Issa, Governor Mike Huckabee, and Turning Point USA's Candace Owens with the most outrageous comments of the week. But first, how was your week? Mine, as you may have heard, was quite eventful. And a message for Whoopi Goldberg regarding what happened on The View this week coming up later in the show. But first, my open. Every week I do an opening statement on whatever it is that has me fired up. This week, take a look. The GDP under Obama was barely 1. We're going up to 4. So you want to talk about hate crime?
I'll tell you about
I fought for a law for hate crime.
I also think it's important, as we said, 89% of the Republican Party still supports him. He still has huge popularity in the country. And if Democrats don't get their you-know-what together, he's certainly going to get reelected.
Here's my question for you, because you talk about...
I am not, Judge.
Nobody is...
Oh, yeah.
Did you just point at me?
Yeah.
Listen, I don't have Trump derangement. Let me tell you what I have.
Okay.
I have a lot of... I'm tired of people starting a conversation with Mexicans or liars and rapists. I'm tired of people starting a conversation about this country. Listen, I'm 62 years old. There have been a lot of people in office that I didn't agree with, but I have never, ever seen anything like this. I've never seen anybody whip up such hate. I've never seen anybody be so dismissive. And clearly you don't watch the show, so you don't know that I don't suffer from that. What I suffer from is the inability to figure out how to fix this. That's my issue. But one of the things that you talk about a lot, and I'm curious about it, is the deep state. How long has the deep state been there, and who's running it?
Well, I want to answer your question because you had
you a question.
You had in your opening statement, which was how horrible it is that Donald Trump is talking about all of these people.
Sorry, you know what
that's
I think is horrible? You said,
but you know
you
what's
said
horrible?
that
when
it
people
was,
who shouldn't be here end up murdering the children of American citizens.
You know what's horrible? When the president of the United States whips up people to beat the hell out of people. Say goodbye.
After that, I was cursed at, and I and my team were thrown out of the building. Should I be angry? I suppose I should. But in the end, this isn't about me. And nobody needs to feel sorry for me. I'm a big girl, and I'd go back on The View again. No one intimidates me. But more on this issue, specifically to Whoopi, who I've known for years, later in the show. As I said, this isn't about me. There's a bigger issue at play here. The View is just a microcosm of what's going on in this country. The level of hatred toward the 45th president of the United States is beyond anything we've seen in American history. He was once an icon, sought after for movies, television, by politicians on both sides of the aisle, sports figures, and yes, even the media. Then he ran for president. Now Donald Trump is the target of vitriol so palpable, it's simply frightening, and reason has become irrelevant. We can't have conversations anymore, and the ripple is national in scope. Family, friends, acquaintances can't even talk to each other. They remove each other from Facebook, and they change dinner and family gathering plans for the holidays depending on their politics. It's almost impossible to have a rational discussion that doesn't turn into a food fight. And for some, it's now even fashionable to threaten the President of the United States.
He talks how he wants to punch people in the face. Well, I'd like to punch him in the face.
They asked me, would I like to debate this gentleman? And I said, no. I said, if we were in high school, I'd take him behind the gym and beat the hell out of him.
When was the last time an actor assassinated a president?
Yes, I have thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House.
And that's not all. When a member of Congress can say this about people who work for and support the president, we have a real problem in America.
You of your cabinet that are being booed out of restaurants, who have protesters taking up at their house, who's saying no peace, no sleep. And if you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd. And you push back on them. And you tell them they're not welcome anymore, anywhere.
Not welcome anymore, anywhere. The anger of the left in America is out of control. When White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders needs Secret Service protection because she speaks for the President of the United States, something's wrong. When we get screamed at even before we give an opinion, something's wrong. When it's acceptable to shout people down, when it's acceptable to not hear what people think, that's the first step to where we don't think. And thinking you're right and not allowing debate is fascism, whether it comes from a Democrat or a Republican, or the right or the left, it's wrong. It seems in America today that the takedown of a president is more important than the success of our nation. I lived through 8 years of Barack Obama. A lot of you heard my opens. I was very clear in my objection to his policies, but I never rooted for America to fail. The things that we should all want and that no one would be against simply don't matter anymore. Minority unemployment, the lowest in history, the economy soaring, ISIS defeated, tax cuts for everyone. They don't seem to matter if it's under this president. Some people are even rooting for an economic collapse.
I feel like the bottom has to fall out at some point. And by the way, I'm hoping for it because I think one way you get rid of Trump is a crashing economy. Yeah. So please bring on the recession. Yeah. Sorry if that hurts people, but it's either root for a recession or you lose your democracy.
So to all you on the left who are threatening our president, shouting down and even attacking his supporters and rooting against America, you're kidding yourselves if you think that what you're doing is standing up for America. What you're doing is tearing down America. And when you do, you're tearing down something more important than even the President of the United States. You're tearing down the values of the United States itself. Everyone has the right to speak. But when you can't even listen to what someone has to say because you despise the man who is president, you undermine not the President of the United States, you undermine the United States. And that's my open. Tell me what you think on my Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. # Judge Jeanine. And remember, my personal message to Whoopi Goldberg about what really went on The View this week is coming up later, and you don't want to miss it. In the meantime, I do want to thank Whoopi and the ladies of The View for helping to make my book, Liars, Leakers, and Liberals, The Case Against the Anti-Trump Conspiracy, #1 on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. So go out and get a copy if you haven't already. And here with reaction to my opening statement and all the developing news today, Counselor to the President, Kellyanne Conway, joins me now. Kellyanne, your thoughts on what's going on with conversation in America today?
That was one of your finest openings, Judge, and that's saying a great deal. I watched the clips of The View after the fact, and I have to credit you because this is what a guest should be. Prepared, poised, persuasive, and pleasant. And you were all of the above. You came armed with the facts, and the audience was listening to you. And a few times when a sprinkling in the audience actually wanted to clap, they stopped because they realized that that was probably not what the whole group wanted to do. And I thought that you acquitted yourself very well. I know you got some help from Meghan McCain, one of the panelists. But I think this is probably someone who's appeared on The View and has been invited back and hasn't gone yet since I've been in the White House. I'll just say this. It's probably a good time for me to remind everyone who the real audience is when we're on television, including now. The audience are not the anchors. The audience are not the press sitting in the seats in the briefing room. The audience are the people. And this president got elected because he connected directly with the people.
Interesting.
Yes, the cameras were rolling. Yes, social media was covering it. But it was his message and the messenger and the delivery directly to the people, unfiltered, that was persuasive and compelling. The other thing you did yesterday was nobody could argue with your metrics. Yeah. Nobody could say, no, you're wrong, Judge Jeanine. You're wrong that it's not the lowest unemployment rate in many years and the lowest unemployment rate ever for African Americans, for Hispanics, and for almost 70 years among women. You're wrong that 3.7 million new jobs or rehiring, reskilling opportunities were committed to President Trump and Ivanka Trump, who worked for months on this issue, by 23 major corporate CEOs in the White House on Thursday. This is a president who believes that diplomacy and conversation is better than hostility and conflict, and he will continue to speak in a bilateral fashion to other leaders around the world. I mean, nobody can argue with the metrics, so they have to shout you down.
Well, you know, Kellyanne, will you go back on The View?
I've been invited to go back on The View, and I've been invited by individual panelists and the producers and others at ABC. I would not foreclose that reason. I mean, I'm in Washington, D.C. My day job is here, and so I don't find myself in New York very often anymore. But I'm certainly not afraid of it. I'm afraid of people. I love getting sick and dying. I'm not afraid of conversation and conflict. I don't understand The View aside. Let me put The View aside for a moment, just to answer your general question about conversation today. I don't know what's got so many people so miserable, but when you engage with them, it's very clear immediately that they've been working on being miserable for decades, years and years and years. It didn't just happen in the last 18 months. I pray for them. I choose not to be like them. And I think if you're a happy warrior and you're pushing for an agenda that you believe in, and I very much believe in what's happening with the security and prosperity, small business ownership, the growth that we have, the unleashing of prosperity and opportunity for people in this nation, it's really amazing. And nobody can argue with those metrics, so they make it very personal. And what I liked most about your opening, Jeanine, is that nobody even wants to hear the first word sometimes. Not on that particular show, just generally. Everybody just in their corners, they don't want to hear. That's why when I tell people, particularly young people, they're the best ambassadors to bring people onto their own point of view. And here's why. People will look at them and say, I like you and you're like me. We have connective tissue together. And I encourage everybody out there to not be shy about their opinion, but to go forth.
Well, okay. And you know, I'm going to end, the interview, and I'm not going to go to another subject that I had planned to go on. When we
you did it, by the way, you made a big mistake though on The View, Jeanine. You made a big mistake. You mentioned President Obama's name. They don't like that. You cannot mention President Obama's name unless you're all googly-eyed and genuflecting.
When I was talking about
because
Russia.
You can't mention President Obama's right. Well, you can't mention President Obama's name unless you're all glowing and googly-eyed and genuflecting. And here you were talking about President Trump's record, President Trump's bringing down the unemployment figures. I'll talk about President Trump getting the NATO allies to pay $44 billion up front in new dues with a commitment of hundreds of billions of dollars more. And so you also did that. People don't like when you raise President Obama now because it's not in connection with the tax cuts, the prosperity, the growth, the security, everything that's happening that's been improving. ISIS on his watch was going all around the globe. Now it is a shadow of itself.
No question.
And so many great things are happening in this country. The deregulation, the president is talking to many countries. He sat down with Chairman Kim. I mean, look, the list goes on and on. We know what the metrics are, and people can't argue the facts, so they argue emotion. I think information beats emotion.
Without a doubt. Kellyanne Conway, thanks so much. And joining me now with more reaction on the President's Week and the left's reaction to it all, Congressman Darrell Issa. All right, good evening, Congressman. You know, I was going to talk about this with Kellyanne, but I'm going to start with you. You know, the president tweeted that the rigged witch hunt headed by 13 angry Democrats, and now 4 more have been added, one who worked directly for the Obama White House, seems intent on damaging Republican Party's chances in November election. This Democrat excuse for losing the 2016 election never ends. What is the president talking about there?
Well, look, the president has an agenda, and he's running it, and he's working it. And every day, all we're seeing is, to be honest, wanting to retry not just the 2016 election, but as you know, they're going back to 2006, raiding his own attorney's headquarters, and then leaking to the New York Times what their spin on that information is, at a time in which, as you know, the president's own legal team is waiving attorney-client privilege to make sure the word gets out that the president has nothing to hide.
Well, I want to talk about that, waiving the privilege on the Michael Cohen stuff, his lawyer. The president waived the privilege because the information had already been leaked out. How did that happen?
Well, it's clear that many people in the so-called Department of Justice are continuing to do exactly what they shouldn't do. They're going in, they're taking a vast amount of information, most of it constitutionally protected, and then spinning it out into the press. And we saw it in the front page of the New York Times. It was despicable. I believe in the First Amendment. The New York Times has to start believing in the other amendments about people's privacy and including their Fifth Amendment rights. But having said that, the president had nothing to hide. And even though this was a private conversation with his attorney, they've waived the privilege. They want it out there because he wants to see this investigation behind him so that the good work he's doing isn't constantly in the shadow of things that go back decades.
Congressman, the truth is that the Russia investigation was teed up by a fake dossier, by a guy who was the head of deputy director or whatever of counterintelligence, number 2 guy, Peter Strzok, who they said, is he going to win for president? No, we won't let him. And we'll get an insurance policy. The insurance policy, of course, was the Russia collusion. So now what we're talking about is porn stars and other, such conversations. I mean, why are we doing this? Are we so intent on bringing the man down that nobody cares? I mean, I really believe, Congressman, it won't matter. They'll think of something else.
It won't matter. And, the amazing thing, Judge, is that we're dealing constantly in allegations that are, in fact, not crimes. There's nothing that has been alleged in this taping that would be a crime by the president. To be honest, these 2006 supposed liaisons, there's no crime there. The amazing thing to me is they cannot, and you dealt with this in that previous segment, you dealt with it with Whoopi Goldberg. They cannot attack the success of the president and his policies. They can't even attack the agenda of what he's trying to accomplish, including meeting with the Russians, meeting with the Chinese, taking on issues like North Korea that have been left for decades unsolved. They can't attack that, so they attack him personally.
Well, it's going to be a very interesting few months. Anyway, Congressman Darrell Issa, thanks so much for being with us tonight.
My pleasure.
All right. And my personal message to Whoopi Goldberg about what went down this week at The View is still ahead, and you can't miss that. Plus, Dan Bongino and Chris Hahn are ready for battle on the panel. But next, who better to give his take on Hillary Clinton's latest foray onto the public stage than this man? Governor Mike Huckabee standing by live. Justice rolls on in a moment.
In this case, it doesn't seem like our president cares. He wants to be friends with Putin for reasons that we're all still trying to figure out.
That's Hillary Clinton today, continuing the liberal freakout over President Trump's summit with Putin. Here with a reaction to that and much more, former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee, who joins me now. All right, good evening, Governor. That was Hillary Clinton at the Ozzy Fest, and I didn't know what it was, but it's part music, part TED Talk, and part food fair. What do you think of that comment? Isn't it awful that the president doesn't care? He wants to be friends with Putin when when she was the one who pushed the reset and on and on and on.
Well, I was just going to say, and by the way, before I do it, congratulations on the book, #1 in America. You're clearly doing some things right, so don't let the critics worry you, and I know that you don't.
No, I don't.
But Hillary today was kind of comical in that here she is talking about friendship with Russia, but as you mentioned, she's the one who pushed the reset button. It was Barack Obama who reached over and tapped the knee of the then president and said, you tell Vlad, when this election is over, I can be more flexible. But the problem was they never took Obama and Hillary seriously because they didn't fear them.
Interesting. I want to move on from that. Something interesting happened this week when the director of national intelligence made news when he was at a conference, and the news came out that President Trump wanted to have President Putin to the White House, and he appeared flip. And his response today is as follows. Some press coverage has mischaracterized my intentions in responding to breaking news presented to me during a live interview. My admittedly awkward response was in no way meant to be disrespectful or criticize the actions of the president. I and the entire intel community are committed to providing the best possible intelligence to inform and support President Trump's ongoing efforts to prevent Russian meddling in our upcoming elections, to build strong relationships internationally in order to maintain peace, denuclearize dangerous regimes, and protect our nation and allies, said DNI Director Dan Coates. Now, so did he get caught with his hands in the cookie jar?
Well, my question is, what caliber gun was being held to his head when he drafted that statement today? Because if there ever was a statement that was a CYA, you just read it directly from Dan Coates. Look, here's what I think people don't understand about Donald Trump. He doesn't sleep a lot. He works harder than anybody I've ever seen. He has so much going on that even his own staff cannot keep up with all that's going on. I used to have a chief of staff, and she would often say that if I know everything that's going on, there's not enough going on. Well, let me assure you, in the Trump White House, there is nobody that knows everything that's going on because nobody can keep up with that much stuff.
But, I've often said that the man is a force of nature, and I even talk about it in my book. I mean, he's the kind of guy that can go into a den of lions and come out with his suit and tie straight and something to put on the wall near the fireplace. But anyway, Governor Mike Huckabee, your final thought on what is happening today in America with the conversation between the right and the left.
There's not a conversation. They're screaming from the left to the right. They don't want us to show up to eat. They don't want us to shop in a store. They don't want us to be in business. It's not a conversation. And that's tragic because I like having conversations with people with whom I disagree, but I want it to be civil. I don't want to scream at people. I don't want people necessarily screaming at me. And I'm very saddened that some people hate Donald Trump so much that they don't even want to step back and say, what is he doing for the country that I can agree with and like? And that's where we need to get.
And on a personal level, your daughter is Sarah Huckabee Sanders. All right, Governor Mike Huckabee, thanks so much for being with us. And you saw what happened on The View, and I have a personal message for Whoopi Goldberg coming up later in the show. You don't want to miss it. And next, Dan Bongino, Chris Hahn. Can they match Whoopi's intensity? The panel is standing by for a debate. Hopefully no one will get kicked out this time. Justice is back in a moment.
Live from America's News headquarters, I'm Robert Gray. Police in Los Angeles on the scene of a hostage situation at a Trader Joe's supermarket. Police say it's unclear how many hostages are inside, but local media outlets are reporting the armed suspect barricaded inside the store is engaged in a dialogue with police negotiators. Police say this all started around 1:30 p.m. local time with a shooting involving a suspect in his late teens, an elderly woman, and a younger woman after a family dispute. The suspect then led police on a chase during which the suspect fired several shots at police. Officials say the chase ended when the suspect crashed the car near the Trader Joe's and ran into the store. Officials say one woman has been taken to the hospital in stable condition. I'm Robert Gray. Now back to Justice with Judge Jeanine.
It's popular nowadays to say ICE is bad, but there's no better representation of American values right now than ISIS. And as an equal opportunity employer, we accept all levels of experience and education, from low to very low, and actively welcome those with diagnosed anger issues. Take it from me, no organization is better than ISIS.
Outrage tonight over that parody by comedian Michelle Wolf comparing ICE to ISIS terrorists. My panel is fired up, ready to battle, so let's get to it and see what they think. NRA TV contributor and former aide to Chuck Schumer, radio show host Chris Hahn joins me now. And Chris and Dan. Dan, I'll start with you. No, actually, no. Chris, I want to start with you. Was that too far?
You know, look, it's comedy, and you've got to give a wide berth to comedy. And, you know, as for, you know, the ICE agents, I don't know what they should be more upset about, this comedy skit or being ordered to take kids from their parents. They're probably more upset about the orders to take kids from their parents.
Dan?
You know, here we go, Judge. Every time Chris comes on every time and says things that are just factually incorrect, and he expects the whole audience to believe them because he worked for Senator Schumer. Nobody was ordered to take kids from their parents. This is fact time, folks, so we can put Chris aside and deal with reality now. There was a court decree called the Flores Consent Decree that determined, by the way, this has been in existence way before Donald Trump.
Chris, let him finish.
That we cannot hold kids for more than 10 days. Therefore, those kids, unless we want to keep them in custody, Judge, they can't be kept with their parents. Chris either doesn't know that or he's on the air lying to the audience again.
You know about the Flores decision, Chris. Yes or no?
I of course know about the Flores decision.
Yeah.
What's being done here right now is that the president has ordered all asylum seekers to be treated like criminals, and ICE agents are being forced to take children from their families. And one other thing, they don't even know where they put them because the Department of HHS had no system to track them. That's a problem in this country, and they've already failed to meet the court expectations to get them back together.
No, the court was very complimentary.
That's where the outrage needs to be.
You're wrong, Chris, but Dan, go right ahead.
Judge, it's exhausting having to come on your show every Saturday and debunk Chris. I'm glad you have him. I actually like Chris off the air, but on the air, he constantly says things that
and I like you, Judge.
No, seriously, you are a great guy off the air. But on the air, he makes stuff up all the time, and he expects you to believe him. Judge, let's be crystal clear on this. These are not asylum seekers. The process for seeking asylum is to go to a port of entry. You will not be arrested if you do that.
Right.
When you enter the country, this is fact time, between ports of entry, you have committed a crime. Therefore, you will be arrested and likely separated from your kids like any other criminal. See, Chris doesn't know that, or he does and he's lying again.
I do know that. And I also know that the president got rid of an Obama policy that would have allowed these people to seek asylum in their home country. Yeah. He's also shortened the amount of people who are working at the border crossing, forcing these people into the desert.
All right, Chris, listen to me. Now you're saying the president, and they can go to any port of entry and seek asylum, all right? Now, the ACLU, representing a whole bunch of them, said they weren't sure whether they wanted to seek asylum. They wanted a week to think about it after the parents and the kids were reunited. So if they all want to seek asylum, some of them reunited don't even want asylum. They said, oh, I'm not sure. I didn't come here looking for that.
They're being pressured in these court cases. They're being pressured when their kids are taken away from them. And of course, they should have time to think about their legal options.
No, their kids are back. If they came Chris, you said they came seeking asylum. If they came seeking asylum, when we reunite them, why do they have to think about whether they want asylum? Dan, hit it.
I think that
Judge, one thing Chris is leaving out of this as well, because it's always convenient to leave out the facts, which he has a really hard time with. Donald Trump signed an executive order asking his own DOJ to challenge the Flores consent decree, which happened before Donald Trump even took office. And the court said, no, Dice, it doesn't work that way. Meaning Donald Trump is actually trying to do something about this situation, whereas Chris comes on the channel every Saturday and just makes stuff up for propaganda
What he's
purposes.
trying to do, Dan, is hold children indefinitely in detention if they come here.
You know what, Chris, I'm not going to let you say that.
Let's be clear what's going on here.
All right,
but
let's talk about
the key here.
now we're totally off the facts,
By the way, but back to Michelle Wolf, clearly the outrage. Back to Michelle Wolf, clearly the outrage is more about the policy than the comedy.
Really? You like ICE agents being dressed up looking like they're about to chop your head off?
Chris is so insane right now. The camera guy's laughing in the room with me. That's how he's actually laughing behind me.
All right. At least we're all laughing. That's a good thing. No, I want to talk about the president. A lot of backlash from his meeting with Putin. What's your reaction, Dan, the meeting with Putin? I'll start with you this time.
Well, listen, Donald Trump, he made a verbal misstep. He acknowledged it the next day. He corrected it. But what Donald Trump, the way he always dunks on the liberals and the media is Donald Trump makes a misstep. Let's say it's a 5 out of 10. So what does the media do? They react like it's a 9 out of 10. Nazi comparisons, Pearl Harbor comparisons. By the way, Judge, this really happened. This treasonous, kooky John Brennan who's lost his mind. So what happens? The next day, the argument becomes about the kooky media response and not a misstep by Trump that he corrected.
Okay,
and that's how he dunks on him every single time.
Seconds. Chris, hit it.
The best thing you could say about Trump and Putin this week was that the president looked weak before Putin. That's the best thing you could say. As for the verbal misstep, nobody in America buys the wood versus wooden thing, and that was just part of the problem with that press conference. There was all sorts of problems there, plus the president sitting in a room alone with that dictator.
Ooh.
What did he say? America has a right to know.
All right.
This is crazy.
Dan Bongino, thanks so much. I just want to say one thing. The president had 8 great days. One word was off. That's all the press talked about. Anyway, my closing statement, a message to Whoopi Goldberg, is still ahead. And next, the most outrageous statements of the week with special guest Candace Owens from Turning Point USA. Don't go away. As I said earlier, wow, what a week it was. And there were so many outrageous comments this week, it was almost impossible to choose. But this rant left me speechless. Take a look.
I looked up the definition of treason as soon as people started saying this was treason, and indeed it is. It's just as serious to me as the Cuban Missile Crisis in terms of an attack or the 9/11 attack. The president is taking the side of the people who attacked us instead of trying to prevent a future attack. I would say that his performance today will live in infamy as much as the Pearl Harbor attack or Kristallnacht.
Disgraceful. Turning Point USA Communications Director Candace Owens joins me now with reaction to that and more. All right, so what do you think of this MSNBC contributor and the fact that she thinks that the president committed treason, which, by the way, for anyone who's interested, the punishment is death? Go ahead, Candace.
I don't know what's going on all of these leftist networks or where they're getting their information from. It just seems absolutely ridiculous that they keep doing this. It's almost like they're playing historical bingo. Every single day they drudge up a different historical, horrific event that we lived through and try to apply it to Trump because they want people to be fearful. And ultimately what this does is it cheapens evil. It cheapens what we actually lived through. It cheapens what the Jews lived through when they compare him to Hitler. It cheapens what the men died. Absolutely. What they died fighting for. The soldiers of America died fighting for our freedom. It cheapens all of that when they make these comparisons.
Well, and I couldn't agree with you more. And, you know, it's an attack like 9/11 where 3,000 Americans died. Yeah, but I want to move on. Now, we have another sound on tape, Candace, of Jimmy Kimmel. Take a listen to this.
I would rather we had a chimpanzee as president of the United States. At least with a chimp, there would be somebody to eat the bugs out of Rudy Giuliani's hair.
I didn't even get the last part of it, but go ahead, Candace.
Look, I would rather we had a comedian for a late night talk show rather than Jimmy Kimmel, who gets up there every single night, cries, brings up his child, uses his child as a prop to get other people to cry. So look, we don't always get what we want, Jimmy. That's all I can say to him.
Yeah, but what about this? Well, I don't get the chimp and the bugs and Rudy Giuliani's hair. I mean, what? I mean, to comment on that?
He single-handedly ruined late night TV. I really do believe Jimmy Kimmel does this. He somehow thinks he's like a political spokesperson, tries to be funny. It's never funny. I think that has to be a fake audience. I don't get it whatsoever, but he keeps going on up there, and good for you, Jimmy. Keep it going.
Okay. And finally, the young lady, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, on PBS firing line. Take a listen.
You use the term the occupation of Palestine. What did you mean by that?
I think what I meant is like the settlements that are increasing in some of these areas and places where Palestinians are experiencing difficulty in access to their housing and homes.
Do you think you can expand on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd also I am not the expert on geopolitics on this issue.
You know, this woman won she tossed out in this primary Joe Crowley, who is a Democrat, very powerful Democrat from Queens. She clearly doesn't understand the issues. And I'm not being critical. I mean, she's a very young woman who's never, held office before. But wow, if you don't know what you're talking about, don't talk about it.
Exactly. That's exactly right. This was my absolute favorite clip of the week. I watched this hundreds of times and laughed out loud. I mean, that moment, I wasn't really expecting you to ask me a question. Usually when I make up a random occupation, no one asks me a question about it. This is hilarious. And I have to say this. Trump needs to put her on payroll. She is the ticket to winning again in 2020. Keep her in front of a camera, Judge.
Well, her candidacy was very much supported by, I think it was the Democrat Socialists of America, and she's an avowed socialist. I mean, there are socialists who are winning elections throughout the country. I mean, the Democratic Party doesn't seem to be in one place or the other. It's like it's all over the place. And by the way, I heard she referred to turning a state red. She was looking forward to it.
Yeah, she did that today. And that wasn't even the worst part of the interview. The worst part of the interview is when the journalist asked her what she thinks about the lowest unemployment rate ever. And she says that the reason the unemployment rate is so low is because people have 2 jobs. I mean, it's incomprehensible. It makes absolutely no sense. She's a comedian. Right. She should take Jimmy Kimmel's job.
All right. Candace Owens, thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right. And you've been waiting for it. It's coming up.
This is a Fox News Alert. I'm Robert Gray. A hostage situation here in Los Angeles at a Trader Joe's grocery store has been resolved. Police saying the suspect has surrendered and is now in custody. Police say this all started around 1:30 p.m. local time with a shooting involving a suspect in his late teens, an elderly woman, and a younger woman after a family dispute. The suspect then took off in a Toyota Camry with the 2 women and led police on a chase, during which the suspect fired several shots at officers. None of them were injured. Meanwhile, police say the chase ended when the suspect crashed the car near the Trader Joe's and then ran inside the store. Police say the 2 women involved in the initial shooting were found in that car, and the younger woman, said to be 20 years old, was injured and is now in fair condition at the hospital. Now, our own Jeff Paul is on the scene. Jeff, tell us what the scene is like now as they we understand, have this suspect in custody. What's going on?
Yeah, Robert, it definitely has calmed down here a little bit. We're waiting for an update from the police chief and the mayor here in Los Angeles. But from what we understand is that the police here threw in a pair of cuffs inside that Trader Joe's. We're in the Silver Lake area of Los Angeles. They threw in a pair of cuffs in there, and he put them on, came outside with his hands in the air, along with 3 of, it sounds like, the remaining people who were inside the store when this all happened. A little while ago, we spoke with one man who was in just walking outside the store as this was all sort of unraveling, and he said from what he saw, he was about to get in his car, saw a car pull up. He said it only had 3 wheels on it, and it couldn't really drive anymore. It tried to make the turn to get inside the parking lot, lost control, hit a telephone pole. That's when he says that a man got out and appeared to be firing his gun. He also said that he saw another woman inside that car, but couldn't really tell what was going on. Obviously, people start firing off a gun. It's pretty scary, so he got some cover. But that's when the suspect that went inside the Trader Joe's, and as you mentioned, this all started as a family dispute. The LAPD telling us that there was some sort of family dispute, and this suspect apparently and allegedly shot his grandmother. We don't know what her condition is right now. We do know that one person was taken to the hospital. That is a younger female victim. We haven't heard of any other injuries or any other people who were taken to the hospital. We also don't know the condition of the people who were inside the store. We do know that, people were shopping. It's, Saturday here. People are getting food for the night, and you can imagine their families inside. We heard that from one man, that his heart just broke hearing that there was a man that was separated from his kids and didn't know if they were okay. It sounds like this has all turned out to be a pretty good situation. As far as what the suspect faces, we'll find out more when we get that update here shortly. Robert?
30. All right, and Jeff, just again, we've seen some people coming out on stretchers. Any idea of how many people were in there? I know it's been a fluid situation, getting that number just very quickly.
Yeah, it's hard to tell how many people were inside. We're hoping that's something we can confirm, but you got to imagine, again, Saturday, Trader Joe's, this is a neighborhood, and we'll work on that information as we get it.
All right, Jeff Paul, thanks so much for us there on location. Now back to Judge Jeanine.
Welcome back to Justice. I couldn't let the week end without addressing what happened on The View this week. All of you saw it, and most of you probably heard both my and Whoopi's version of what you didn't see after I was thrown off the set. Now, I'm not here to rehash old news, and in the spirit of tonight's opening statement, I'd like to close the book on this and move on, and I'd like you to do so as well. Some of you may not know that I've known Whoopi Goldberg for years, and our relationship up until this week has always been friendly. Furthermore, I've been a guest on The View many times before Thursday's appearance and was always treated with respect. To you, the viewer, I invite you to go online and watch the entire segment and make your own judgment about how I conducted myself and how I was treated. And to Whoopi, I accept that you and I have different versions of what happened on Thursday, both on and off the air, and that we have completely different takes on President Trump and the job he's doing. So let's agree to disagree and put this episode to bed for once and for all. And thanks for taking time out of your comments on Friday to pay me a compliment.
Jeanine, good luck with your book. I hear it's #1. I preferred your last book about Robert Durst, but there's no accounting for taste, I like the book. I like the last book.
Thanks, Whoopi. And may I say, I preferred you in the movie Ghost much more than I do on The View. But then again, we're all entitled to our opinions. We'll be right back. And finally tonight, my new book, Liars, Leakers, and Liberals, The Case Against the Anti-Trump Conspiracy, came out this week. A big thanks to all of you who've already bought it. I'm so excited that you're going to all finally read it. But if you don't have your copy yet, go to Amazon or BarnesandNoble.com right now to order it. And by the way, if you like my opens, you won't be able to close my book. Get it? And remember to friend me on Facebook and follow me on Twitter at Judge_Jeanine. Make sure to let me know what you think about the show, about my open, about my book, even about my appearance on The View. I love to read your thoughts. Thanks so much for watching tonight. I'm Jeanine Pirro, advocating for truth, justice, and the American way.